Hey, davidtswood here, and welcome to my extra mile. Rainy day here, still beautiful, still heading out. But you know, the today's show is a solo show, and when I think of Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, I think of this particular word, and not the word, the act. And what I understand about this act, because it's something I practice every single day, as many times as I can. It starts internally. It's how we treat ourselves, is how we treat the world. And this particular superpower is such a dynamic force. And that's why these people I mentioned not only utilize this, they understand its power, and they were able to tilt the world on its axis by utilizing it. So you have a chance not just to listen to this show, but to adopt it and bring it into your everyday life, first with yourself and then with the rest of the world. Please get involved. You know what to do. Subscribe. The like button really helps with algorithms, but your conversation, your comments, what you're learning, and how you're utilizing these things is so important to me. I do read every single one. I do answer them personally. So please get involved with the community, and we'll definitely see you on the other side. Hey guys, so continuing my car solo shows, today I thought I'd talk about something that really is very dear to my heart, in the sense of that some of the people that I really admire through history, and I'll use a few, which are, I mean, a lot of us admire these people: Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Oprah Winfrey, it doesn't matter. But they all have something in common, that they wielded that truly had an impact on the world, but truly is part of the reason they have, or their legacy will endure through history. And they all wielded the same thing. And I mean, and they led revolutions, if you think about it. Not Mother Teresa, not so much, but Nelson Mandela was a freedom fighter. Who ended up going to jail for 27 years. Mahatma Gandhi went to jail under the rule of the British, fighting for the independence of India. But Mahatma Gandhi, he was a lawyer in South Africa. I think he lived in South Africa for 18 years, or 21 years maybe, raised a family there. And part of what happened to him is he got persecuted because of the color of his skin. And if you've lived in Africa, I've lived in many, many countries in Africa. And, in Africa, it's not a question of black and white. It's a question of every shade, every tribe. It's a tribal thing. And there's definitely a status. I always thought when I first went there, when you think about apartheid and you think about the separation of black and white, but actually the challenge was between the tribes themselves, because if you were a Zulu leader or a Zulu boss, you were not going to employ a Xhosa or any of a Zulu. And so what happens with Gandhi is he really suffered at the hand of persecution and racism, and that sort of led him to come back to India and lead the country to independence in 1947. And again, I'm driving the car here, so if I get some of the dates wrong, it's just stuff I remember, not stuff I've sat and researched. Nelson Mandela, of course, he was a freedom fighter against the British rule in South Africa. And if you think about what happened there with apartheid, I believe apartheid began in 1940 or something like that, after the war, maybe 47. And then, that endured until 1994, but when Nelson Mandela went into prison at Robben Island, imagine this, 27 years of his life in prison, and really becoming great friends with his jailer. And coming out of prison, he led this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was about not, an eye for an eye, where, now he was going to become the president of South Africa. he wanted to, using a peaceful process of truth and reconciliation, is to sort of right the wrongs without the hatred, through compassion. And again, I'm just going into, you'll see it'll get dark and light here because of the so you know, you've got these examples, and of course Nelson Mandela, like I said, did that. Mahatma Gandhi, it was all about non-violent protest, right? So this idea of a non-violent approach to, I think it was when the British imposed a salt tax, that Gandhi really did his thing. But remember again, we talked about a compassion. I'm just trying to show you my face because it's getting, where I'm sitting, where the sun is, it's kind of strange. Through this compassion that he had, you know, was really able to mobilize the entire nation around a concept of peaceful protest, even though they were getting killed, even though they were getting beaten. You know, it was just in the end the groundswell. And what did he do? You know, he was a very successful lawyer who, when he became the head of the Indian Congress, I think it was called, again, my history's maybe not so great, but you know, he adopted the rural loin, you know, simple woven material, shaved his head, lived on a very, very simple diet of vegetables, you know, and he reminds me actually of Pope Francis. You know, Pope Francis at the papal office, you know, relinquished all of the trappings of the Vatican, which was vast, and just sleeps in a very simple room with a very simple bed and a simple diet, and just said, look, this is how I live. This is what my connection to the masses are. And we see that throughout history. Mother Teresa goes to Calcutta, and through love and love alone, you know, she is nothing. She's a tiny little woman, under 5 feet tall, I believe, and became one of the most powerful people, could enter any government around the world. She could open any door because of one thing, again, going back to compassion. Mandela, compassion. Gandhi, compassion. Mother Teresa, compassion. I think Oprah Winfrey, what she did is her ability to connect with the sort of the real story of humanity, her struggles with her weight, her struggles with relationships. You know, she sort of identified with a common folk, with common issues, with common problems. And that's what, again, when we look at all of these great people in history that wielded the compassion sword versus the aggression, or, you know, leading wars, or, you know, all these different ways that people have gained power. But when does it come down to us, you know, to you and me? How do we navigate life with compassion? I mean, I just did a show, Tell the Truth All the Time, with compassion. But compassion is something that has to start internally. It has to start with us. And so if we're not compassionate to ourselves, and comparison and compassion are kind of, you know, they're opposites. So if you're in comparison with yourself and other people, it's very hard to be compassionate, because all the other dark energies creep in, you know, jealousy, or, you know, self-loathing, you know, all these different things. Self-love diminishes. So again, when we're compassionate to ourselves, we definitely can be compassionate. I'm turning a corner here. I don't want the phone to slide away. We definitely can be compassionate to others. So it does start with that inner conversation. But also, you know, as you walk through the world, I think one of the things that I've really learned that has helped me navigate all these different countries and cultures is just seeing people. I don't see the distinctions of wealth. I don't see the distinctions of clothing or the distinctions of cars. It's that all people, regardless of, you know, their economic background, or their education, or the color of their skin, or, you know, their beliefs, all people are people. And all people, you know, we bleed the same, our heart beats the same, 100,000 beats a day, right? We're fragile in this world, right? Where I'm driving a car right now, it's a fragile process. This body wasn't built to withstand immense pressure from a car accident or falling out of the sky. So we're a fragile thing. And every single person has two fragilities. One is the physical fragility of a human body. The second is which is much more, effect, is the fragility of our souls, fragility of our hearts, fragility of our minds, and how people walk through life carrying the baggage of the past, or the wounds that inflicted on by their parents accidentally, or sometimes deliberately, or their grandparents, or the media, or whatever it is. We're very, very fragile in this world. And one of the things that not only connects us, one of the things that allows us to have immense power, and I'm not saying power over people, I'm saying immense power, internal power, external power, the power of attracting the things we want, the power of connection, which is what I think at the root of every single human being. We want to connect on a more deep and more meaningful and loving level. And so that this one word, compassion, is a powerful force. And really, I think that, what I want to do is give you some thoughts about it. Like, you walk up to someone, and I want you to start to notice what goes through your head when you see someone, and whether it's judgment. So, for example, if you see someone with a leather jacket and tattoos all over their face and huge rings, what does it evoke in you? What thought process comes up? What goes through your mind when you see that? And for a lot of people, there's a stereotype that comes to bear from our mind, and we have a judgment, and we don't know. I mean, this could be a father of 3 young children who loves motorbikes, loves tattoos, and is one of the kindest human beings on the planet. It could be someone who's just going through a divorce. It could be somebody who got caught up as a young person in a way of life that really wasn't something necessarily that he chose that young, but is a path he ended up going on. And imagine when you walk down the street and people are looking and judging, then the subconscious mind is so powerful, it picks up those feelings. It picks up what people feel about you. So what happens is we start to live into the projections of the world around us, projections of the people around us. So, if people are thinking negative thoughts, then what tends to happen is the person we're projecting that onto will start to become more closed, more defensive, and start to feel the world has something against them, and so they start to behave in a way that sort of manifest exactly the same thing that was being projected on them. So it's interesting, and we see that with and I often wonder, if I was to sit down with Hitler when he was a young man, and when he was struggling as an artist, and he was very, very short, so he struggled with his physical size, and then he struggled with fitting in because he was in love with the arts, and didn't do well there. And you can see how I wonder if his paintings had sold, and if he was encouraged, and all these different things, whether the path he ended up choosing of such extreme hatred would have been possible if more compassion had been shown to him at a younger age, more understanding, more connection, more interest, more fascination, all these different things. Now, that may be an extreme example, but I use extreme examples like Mahatma Gandhi's an extreme example, and Nelson Mandela's an extreme example, because they've come on or gone on to become, incredible, images of good in the world, right? When we see those images, the majority of us feel that way, that these are good people who did great things, and whose quotes that we often, you think about that, Gandhi, some of the quotes that go through my mind, an eye for an eye and the whole world goes blind. They're very, very simple, but all rooted in this one energy of compassion. So I wonder again if one of the things you could practice over the next 30, 60, 90 days is to extreme compassion, is whoever it is that you walk up to, whether it's a clerk in a store, whether it's a young guy, with tattoos and a sour look on his face, whether we can project, whether we end up connecting verbally or not, but projecting a different thought pattern, projecting interest, fascination, projecting, noticing if the judgment comes up or fear comes up. It's funny. The other day I had a conversation with a young girl, and she was sitting at my table. She's the daughter of friends of mine, and she's 13. And she said something, and she said, somehow hitchhiking came up, and she said, hitchhiking is bad and dangerous. And I said, well, I disagree with you. I hitchhike all the time, and I don't find that to be true. She said, well, you're a big guy. And I said, that's true. Now, but I just said, I want you not to say, because think about what you just said, hitchhiking is bad and dangerous. Now, I've hitchhiked all over the world, and recently hitchhiked in Vanuatu, which is in the South Pacific. And, I have no negative feelings about it whatsoever. I also pick up hitchhikers when I see them on the side of the road, and I've brought them home with me. I've done lots of things, right? But I don't have that sense that hitchhiking is bad. Now, and the only thing I asked the challenger, I said, would it be wise for you to hitchhike alone? Maybe not, as a young 13-year-old girl. I said, but I do see women all over the world hitchhiking. I mean, when I'm in Australia, I often see hitchhikers on the side of the road, and often it's a woman. So it's not that it doesn't happen. But I just, again, it's that blanket comment, it's dangerous. Well, if you get picked up by me, and I'm able, because I understand hitchhiking so well, if I pick you up in a strange situation, I'm going to drive you out of my way to take you somewhere where it's either easier, or I'll take you to a destination. I've often invited people back to my house and fed them because they're on the road. But that's because, so is it dangerous? Or can it sometimes be dangerous if you're picked up by the wrong person, or if you don't trust your spider sense? I mean, if you're about to get into a car and you get this weird feeling, then probably you shouldn't get into that car, right? You should trust that. So anyway, it wasn't, my point was, and then I told her a story, and I know Kathy listens to the show, so she's listening as I'm sharing this story. But I was driving through Zimbabwe. I was in a rural part of Zimbabwe, and this girl was hitchhiking on the side of the road, and I picked her up and ended up driving her a long way to Harare. She'd never driven a car, so I got her to try driving. She was terrible. I know you're listening, Kathy. But in the end, a few months later, Pam and I paid for her to come to Canada, and she came and lived with us. And she'd never been out of South Africa. Zimbabwe. And then she ended up living with a friend of mine in Calgary, Jim. And now she's been in the U.S. She lives in the United States, over on the East Coast there, and she was able to provide for her family. And she was telling me yesterday, she spoke to her on the phone yesterday, and she was telling me that how she, has always puts her family first. And because of that hitchhiking experience, she was able to provide, if you know the history of Zimbabwe and how Mugabe went crazy and, took away all the farms from the white farmers, and the country plummeted into not just a recession, but a depression where people were really going hungry. And she was able to earn money and provide for her family because she was picked up on the side of the road, and it led to this, It led to a series of events that was truly life-changing. So again, this is that whole compassion part, is if we live in fear, if we live by blanket statements that, people who ride motorbikes and have tattoos are bad people, for example. I ride a Harley, right? I don't have tattoos, right? But the fact is, it pushes us away from the compassion zone and into the judgment zone and the comparison zone. And we're in this constant game of pinball in our mind where we're getting, the things that have happened over our lifetime give us these blanket feelings or statements about, people, about nationalities, about traditions, about cultures, about languages, about food. We come up with this, and we use stereotypes. So again, my challenge to you is to go 90 days And just notice every single time you move out of compassion, and then consciously push yourself into compassion by taking a breath, taking a moment, having a deeper, more real, more beautiful conversation, and sort of, and especially if fear comes in as well, is pushing the fear aside and moving yourself into just a richer and deeper connection. And watch what happens when we lead with compassion. Watch what happens to people, how they open, and how people who are generally closed can open like a beautiful, a clamshell with that beautiful pearl in the middle, and you remember how a pearl is formed. They put a grain of sand when they're growing pearls, they put a grain of sand in the oyster, and the oyster creates the pearl to protect itself from an irritation. And so that can happen. Every single person is like a pearl inside, and with that irritation, with judgment, and with people who are not compassionate, who are they use comparison or judgment, then that shell closes to protect that person. So a lot of people are walking around with a closed heart, with a hardened shell, yet inside is that pearl. And the way I found to open that clam, open that shell, is through compassion and love, fascination, interest, kindness, all these different energies, and definitely not with fear. So if I feel any fear whatsoever, and especially around a person, I simply get into a conversation, start asking questions, and it doesn't take long to dive into someone's world and figure out, hey, we're just all the same, we're just these beautiful beings that, in the right scenario, we flourish, and that shell opens and that pearl shines. So anyway, enjoy it. Don't forget, if you want to join me on Instagram or Facebook, David T.S. Wood, please subscribe, please push like, and get involved with the conversation. Let me know what some of the things you want me to talk about. You can ask me specific questions and I'll get them on for you. And I'm just going to go and hit some golf balls. Ciao.